It's 2022. Abuse in the workplace is unacceptable.
That's not my problem!
You're sat in a restaurant and the man on the table to your right is screaming at the waiter. Are you happy to live in a society like that?
We're all disabled on our head!
Does anybody deserve to be disrespected in that way? If I told you that there was a profession where 2/3 of its employees suffer regular abuse, a large portion of which leads to physical abuse, what would you say?
Shooting can be an emotive subject for many people. I would say in the last 5 years, there's been more emphasis from individuals and organisations with mistruths, which has heightened the abuse that rural workers, gamekeepers get on the ground. We have fed that back to the police and they take that very seriously now. No worker should suffer abuse in their workplace, and this has culminated in legal methods of predator control and management practices on moorland becoming under a spotlight. So it really does have an effect, not just on the keepers, but their families, and the welfare and mental health of the rural workers. It is a really big problem.
Gamekeepers are basically a rural worker. And with the advent of social media, the job title has been vilified by certain people, not everybody, but it's very easy to take some relatively dubious statistics and bend them to what you want to say. If we're looking at rural crime, for example, and the biggest one that gets thrown around at gamekeeping specifically is raptor persecution. Now, I'm not saying for 1 minute that any rural crime should hold more weight over another. That's the wrong thing to suggest. And raptor crime, poaching, theft from farms, they're all rural crimes that affect people. There are genuine consequences to those people, to their families, to the community they live in, work in, or socialise with. Whether those people are shooting people, gamekeeping, conservationists, farming, or people who live in a rural environment and work in an urban environment. In the Midlands and southern England, that's more prevalent, which is why social media makes it so easy for somebody trying to say gamekeepers are bad. Basically, these days, if you write something down, it becomes fact, whether it is or not.
A particular sad example of a young keeper in his mid-20s was about 18 months ago. The abuse that he received in person and online caused him to hand in his notice. So not only did he lose out on the occupation and the employment route that he took from an early age, but it also meant his house and his vehicle was lost. And this was directly from abuse regarding his profession. The police took that very seriously, but it was too late for him. It simply wouldn't be tolerated in any other profession, and we see it more and more often in gamekeeping.
The social media side, they see it more and they comment it more because we're the guys with the guns. And I've had a dog a couple of years ago, went missing for about 24 hours. We found the dog in the wood, returned it back to their owner. But in between that time, you were persecuted of actually killing that dog, People just get it wrong.
I'm Matt McLennan, father to two, a husband, a professional gamekeeper, and this year I fell victim to saboteurs interfering with what I do. They've come in, they've affected my shoot, how it works, and we have no idea how that's going to affect us in the long term, which could also affect my house, my living, and what I do. It all started with me realising that there was a problem with my birds. I spend most of my day around my birds in the early part of the releasing season. My birds were disappearing, they were jumpy, they actually came down with a disease which was caused by stress related to the birds being worried by something. Used my professional knowledge to try and work out what it was, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it. It turns out what had been happening is we'd had a group of people coming in, anti-hunting saboteurs, that had been disturbing the birds, kicking holes in the pen, walking my birds out of the pen, and generally filming me and what I do on a daily basis, unbeknown to myself.
When we're looking at statistics, there's a statistic that was bandied about on Twitter not very long ago, and it had a lovely pie chart that said from 1990 to 2019 there were 181 convictions for raptor crime, which sounds like a lot. Of that 181, 67.4% were gamekeepers, which sounds like an extraordinary amount. But when you actually start to drill into those statistics over that 30-year period, now that's 122 too many. But when we start to look at the statistics that actually drill down into it and remove the percentages, we're looking at an occupation that's got around 5,500 people employed in it, and 122 are criminals, which is about 2.2%, which again, 2.2% too many. But if we look at this on a national average, and we're looking at crimes, according to the Office of National Statistics in 2019 to 2020, 77.6 people out of every 1,000 have committed a crime, which is 7.7% of the population in England and Wales are criminals. And if we look back at the 2.2% of gamekeepers that are said to be criminals, it means statistically gamekeeping has far less criminality involved in it than the average of the UK population.
On Monday, the police turned up at my door, the place where my children live, the place that I provide for my family. They turn up personally there. They put me under caution for something that I haven't done. They want to come out and look at my work, and everything is cleared and proven that there is no issue there whatsoever. And yet, these people that have reported me, that have been trespassing, that have been causing criminal damage, I ask what is to be done to them when everything is proven that I'm in the clear. Nothing is the answer, nothing at all. So tell me, in what other industry do people go out of their way to follow you, to video record you and your family, because my kids come with me on a day-to-day basis. They report you to the police and they try and get you prosecuted for something that you haven't done. Why are we allowing this? Why does this happen? I work in the countryside. You know, it's a peaceful place to work. It's why we do it. We don't do it for the money. We do it for the love of the job and the love of your surroundings. And I'm now constantly feeling like I'm being watched, you know, and it's stalking and it's harassment. And if you did it in any other place, you would be arrested, you'd be taken away for that. And for some reason, there's this loophole in the law where they seem to allow these people to go and follow people around and do what they want.
You cannot defend any crime. You can't defend poaching, you can't defend rural crime, you can't defend wildlife crime, you can't defend raptor crime. But in context, 122 convictions over a 30-year period is low. The other thing that is slightly frustrating from a point of view when we're talking about crimes is the word incident. And you've got to be very careful when you're reading things. Quite often they'll say it was a suspected shooting incident. I don't quite know what that means. So incidents aren't crimes. That's just somebody thinks somebody might have tried to do something. So it's like me saying, I suspect my car's been stolen, but I actually can't remember where I've parked it. We've got to look at innocent until proven guilty, and I think we've also got to remember that the statistics show us that the 2.2% compared to 7.76%, that gamekeepers are, generally speaking, law-abiding people who do not go out of their way to commit a crime.
The bottom line is this has to stop. If this was about anything else, if this was about race or religion or gender that these people hated against, which it is, it's hatred, then they would be arrested. There's laws put in place to protect these different races, religions, genders, beliefs. But yet, because I am part of an age-old industry that protects the countryside by creating an income from a bird that is managed, then I am hated upon, and that is completely acceptable in the eyes of the law, which it isn't. It must stop. We need protection, we need help, and what I'm saying really is that please, somebody help us before we end up in a position where our lives are endangered because these people become aggressive, they become violent, they become intimidating. Just somebody help us, give us a hand, put a law in place, put something in there that helps us defend what we do without threatening us that we will lose what we do.
The thing that shocks me most about all this is that gamekeepers live on the land they look after. And so all too often, their families get involved in these situations. How would you feel if your kids were woken up in the middle of the night to a group of people stood outside your house filming?